Today, we're going to be discussing the most important practice of all, protection. This is the foundation of all esoteric work. This is the foundation of all good manifestation. This is the foundation of all spell work. This is the foundation of any kind of spiritual activation. This is something that you must be very established in before you can really have solid footing in doing anything else spiritual related. The entirety of your spiritual path hinges on your ability to regulate your energy and protect your willpower. So we've talked about this in other videos before, about manifestation, not allowing others to project their limitations and thoughts onto you, not taking on other people's feelings and thoughts and limitations as your own. This is a big part of that, okay? And we'll get into the mechanics of all that in a little bit. But just know that you are an interdimensional being, okay? This physical 3D flesh body that we have is one of many bodies that exist simultaneously within one another. So you're basically a big interdimensional onion and you have many layers to you. And all of these layers can become impacted and even corrupted just as the body can become injured. These different layers of being can also become injured when not practicing what we're going to be talking about here. The outermost layer of this interdimensional onion is your auric field, and it's basically just a bubble of light and magnetism that keeps you protected from malignant forces. Entry into your auric field can be gained through one of two ways. It can either be gained through your self-preservation instinct, or it can be gained through your sex instinct. So being in a state of desperation or survival mode can make you vulnerable, as well as being in a state of deep desire for someone can make you vulnerable to attack. So these two things can be preyed upon, and they can essentially be used against you to gain access to your energy body. And I just made a video on my memberships page talking about, sexual connection and sexual energy, how these movements of energy happen during sexual encounter and what's happening when people are connecting sexually. And why it really is a sacred practice. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, check out my memberships page. I do have it on there. So the auric field operates very similarly to the way our skin protects us from bacteria and infection. It's essentially a layer that keeps us safe from external forces that seek to penetrate it. And much psychic attack is built on the foundation of telepathic suggestion. This is why it's common practice in cult programming to use things like repetition of phrases and mind-altering substances to achieve mind control. Mind control through the use of telepathic suggestion is happening everywhere under your nose. And if you want to see evidence of it, look at marketing psychology. It's rampant. Certain bodily cues, subtle communication suggestions, all can get somebody to respond in a desired way, thinking it was their idea. When your energy body is unprotected, you become susceptible to things like influence, suggestion, manipulation, and in extreme cases, you become vulnerable to outright attack. But until the aura is pierced, there can be no access to your physical or subtle bodies. And the aura is always pierced from the inside through your fear or desire going out towards the attacking entity. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be a desire for that person. It could just be a desire for their validation, a desire for their feedback, a desire for them to see you in a certain way. That's what I mean when I say desire. It doesn't mean you have to necessarily be sexually attracted to the person that is, initiating attack. It just means that you maybe put them on a pedestal or see them in some sort of high regard and you desire something from them. That makes you vulnerable. And that's why in the manifestation community, they always talk about don't put people up on a pedestal. Put yourself on the pedestal. That pedestal is spiritual protection. You don't need validation from anybody. You don't need anybody's approval. All right? Know thyself, know who you are, and stand in that truth. Unwavering. It's important to understand that most psychic attacks are not intentional. There's definitely people out there who are malicious, but I think the likelihood and the percentage of people that are like that is pretty small. I don't think it's a huge percentage of the population that's actually intentfully practicing black magic on other people. A lot of the time it's unintentional. It's just people who are unaware of the way that their energy is impacting others. If anything, much psychic attack is self-inflicted. And I think that's a conversation that a lot of people don't want to have. But we're having it, so sit down, hold your britches, and let's get ready. Okay? A lot of psychic attack is self-inflicted. And it's really just born out of unawareness. A lot of people just don't realize the impact of their actions. And, most of the time, the person who is doing it doesn't even realize that they're doing it. This is something to always consider when you're assessing whether something is psychic attack or not. Because your knee-jerk reaction should not be to respond to the psychic attack with another attack. All right, this can just bring unnecessary risk and pain and trouble to both you and the individual. So it's just always best to, once again, regulate yourself and really reflect on what this could potentially be. Maybe sit down and do some channeling, ask yourself, ask source, is this something that's intentional? Is this something that's malicious? What could this be coming from? Unintentional interference is the most common kind of attack. So that's why a regular or even daily practice of establishing fortitude is so important for peak effectiveness. The whole of psychic work is built on the law of consent, meaning that someone needs consent from you in order to access your field of energy to impact it in some way. But lack of awareness is automatic consent. So if you are not consciously setting intentions for your protection, then your field can become porous, and anything or anyone can enter it to manipulate or even harm you. Psychic protection is all mental energy and willpower, and specifically developing them so that they become a metaphorical armor of sorts. You're quite literally protected by your integrity. But your integrity isn't the only thing that's protecting you. There must also be conscious intention and core beliefs created around feelings of safety and being protected. And developing these ideas as core beliefs doesn't mean that you can't express fear or feel fearful or paranoid about things. Developing these beliefs doesn't take fear out of the picture. It doesn't mean that you can't feel fear. Fear is inherent. It's a relic of our current biological makeup in animal form. Our body's constitution is ever-changing as we evolve interdimensionally, and even this process of generating protection is contributing to that evolution. We are collectively evolving out of fear. And we probably won't see the full expression of that evolution in our lifetime, but we are a part of it. Too much fear too often, however, can be a gateway through which attack occurs. But generally, it can be a valuable tool. You just have to know how to work with it. Fear is something we welcome lovingly with the knowing that it's usually one of two things. A, it's your discernment calling for you to remove yourself from a potentially harmful setting, like in the case of you feeling uneasy or unsafe around someone. Please, please trust your gut. Even if you're overthinking, it's better to be safe than sorry. Or B, it's a call for you to invite in courage, like in the case of feeling doubtful or scared before a big interview or a big exam. Courage doesn't mean denying fear. It means having the willpower to persist through it. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the mastery of fear. And courage is really a form of psychic protection. But one of the most powerful forms of protection is privacy, because you can't project energy onto what you don't know exists. Perception is the portal for thought forms to become influential. So keep some things sacred, keep some things unseen. This is something that's highly debated within the community because there's some people who feel that they can share whatever they want to the world and it doesn't matter because they know that they're protected. And I think somebody who is very set in this belief, that's probably the case. But I've just found it's better to keep certain things private. Like there are certain experiences that really are just meant for you, and not everything is meant to be shared. And I say this as somebody who has a tendency to overshare. I've just found in my experience that it's better to just exercise discipline around that and to keep certain things private. Less is more. I also think social media has kind of normalized sharing very intimate experiences with strangers on the internet, which can be really touching in some ways. Like, this isn't just a bad thing, but overall, I think it can generally be one mass self-humiliation ritual. So think twice before you share that screenshot of your fight with your ex on Facebook. Okay? Please, some things are really just meant for you and your close loved ones. And sometimes not even for them. Like some things really are just meant for you, especially if you are walking a spiritual path. There's going to be a lot of things that happen. There's going to be a lot of experiences that you cultivate that you can't explain, that you aren't able to verbalize to people, and that's okay. So let's talk about the things that one can experience when psychic attack happens. What are some things to pay attention to and keep in mind when assessing whether or not something is psychic attack? The first one is intense fear and a feeling of impending doom, especially if it's sudden and has no known source. This is because all things have an etheric imprint before they manifest materially. The particularly sensitive person may be able to feel these subtle essences before the physical effects of attack. So you may have the feeling that you're being watched, or you may feel like something bad is about to happen. You just have this persistent anxiety around it that is unshakable. Okay, you may need to just do a cleansing on yourself. This usually happens when an attack is initiated, but you have a pretty solid spiritual fortitude. Usually that fear is that attack trying to stimulate an emotion that makes you vulnerable to being compromised. So once again, emotional regulation is key. All right, this is a pretty early sign of attack. This is usually before things start to manifest physically. But the next one is exaggerated exhaustion or symptoms of illness with no explainable cause. This is not your average burnout. This is excessive lethargy with no known connection to any illness or condition. Things like bodily weakness, sleeping for excessive amounts of time, mental fog, sudden unexplained weight loss that has no connection to any illness or condition is also a symptom of attack. This usually means that the attack has penetrated your auric field and is starting to affect the physical body. Okay, and there have been people who have developed illnesses as a result of psychic attack. Not all illness is a result of psychic attack, but there are some instances where people become suddenly ill after having perfect medical history because they are victims of spiritual attack. The next one is night terrors. The occasional bad dream is one thing, but to have persistent and recurrent night terrors that are usually accompanied by bodily symptoms like sweating, hyperventilating, being scared to fall asleep, this could be a sign of psychic attack. It's also not uncommon to wake up with scratches or bruises. Once again, these don't always have nefarious sources, but sometimes they can be the result of a psychic attack. So once again, it's just important to exercise discernment and assess before jumping to conclusions. The next sign is paranormal activity. Not all paranormal activity is a result of psychic attack, but sometimes psychic attack can be accompanied by paranormal activity. You always need to rule out the possibility of material explanation before jumping to the assumption that something is paranormal. And I say this as someone who loves the paranormal, okay? I love all things spooky, but let's be honest, not everything is the spooky. Some things really are just the house settling or the wind blowing a certain way or a draft in the house. Just remember that when experiencing things that you think may be paranormal. The next sign is destiny swapping. And I've seen a lot of talk about this on TikTok. Someone also asked me to talk about this on my channel, so I figured I'd incorporate it into this video. But destiny swapping is the act of setting intentions to essentially switch places with someone else. So let's say someone sees what you have, they like your life, they want it, they set the intention to switch places with you. And this usually manifests as certain things in your life falling apart, good things that were happening to you kind of slipping away, maybe even somebody coming in and taking things from you. Like sometimes the perpetrator can come in and steal the job or steal the partner. So it's really important to remain fortified against this, setting those intentions of protection. When we're removed from people's lives, we only see the good parts. So the problem with destiny swapping is that not only are you trading the good parts, you're also trading to get the bad parts of someone's life. The problems, the trials and tribulations, those things also accompany destiny swapping. There's nothing wrong with feeling inspired. There's nothing wrong with saying, oh my gosh, I would love to have something like that for myself. Let me set intentions to create that for myself instead of taking it from them. All right. I think it comes from a wounded place to want a destiny swap with someone. I think somebody who's truly empowered in mysticism doesn't do this because if you can set intentions and spend energy on trading places with somebody else, then you can set intentions and create energy around even a better life than what you would get if you destiny swapped with someone. So just know you are protected, set intentions, know that you're protected, and you will be protected. And obviously, exercise discernment. If you see someone who's a little bit sus, and they're kind of envious or jealous, set intentions to protect yourself from those people too. And we'll talk about methods of protection and what you can do in just a bit. But the last sign, and probably the most extreme sign of psychic attack, is the sudden urge to harm oneself or harm others. And let me be clear, mental illness can be caused by psychic attack in very rare circumstances, but not all mental illness is related to psychic attack. However, everything fundamentally is energetic in origin, and this includes mental imbalances. However, they're not always connected to psychic attack. Sometimes they're carried over through lineage, all right, like intergenerationally, or they can be karmic in origin, being carried over from past lives. Regardless of whether or not you believe in them, these things exist. And those who aren't open to things beyond scientific explanation are actually quite susceptible to being influenced by the very things they don't believe in. Because again, lack of awareness equals consent. However, these unseen forces are not inherently evil. Because on the other end of the spectrum, you get people who are aware that these forces exist, but they react to them from a place of fear. And this also makes them vulnerable to being influenced by them. Ultimately, spiritual forces are neutral, like water and fire. They can bring both life or destruction. They become corrupted and perverted by the activities of selfish men and women who use these forces at the expense of others for their own benefit. So now that we've discussed what psychic attack looks like and how it works, let's talk about how you can generate protection. Daily grounding and clearing is key, and you can do this through visualization, meditation, prayer, going out into nature, finding your balance, finding your center, finding your sense of inner peace, partaking in activities that help you navigate back to that. Okay, this is especially the case if you're in an environment like at work where you have somebody who is actively trying to sabotage or attack. They could be doing things to try to get a rise out of you or whatever. This is so important. Finding some sort of regular and routine practice where when you leave this environment, when you leave this setting, you can clear yourself of the energy that's being projected onto you. So this can be done through saying a little prayer when you leave work, praying that the energy is removed and praying that the energy has no effect on you, or affirming. You can do this through affirming as well. Prayer and affirmation are very similar, if not the same thing. You can do this through setting intentions to clear anytime you step out of that environment. And it specifically has to be when you've removed yourself from the environment, because if you're still in the environment, it's like a dirty fishbowl. You're trying to cleanse yourself when the bowl itself is dirty. So it's important to leave and remove yourself from the environment that is toxic and then cleanse yourself, okay? And doing that every single time. It's just so important to establish a routine of cleansing yourself and cleansing your space, okay? Especially if you're the type of person who's in a toxic work environment or you're in some sort of environment where you're bringing home other people's energy. Cleanse your space, cleanse yourself, and do it regularly. Another thing I want to discuss when talking about cleansing is smudging. Smudging is a closed practice, meaning it's only available to specific indigenous groups and tribes who have it woven into their lineage. The act of burning ethically sourced sage with the intent to cleanse your space is not smudging. White sage is over-harvested as a result of the commercialization of spirituality. So it's important to be mindful of where you're sourcing your sage. If you're not able to find an ethical source of white sage, consider using other herbs like cedar or even other varieties of sage like garden sage or purple sage. You can use rose petals or cinnamon. The next way of generating protection is to incorporate symbology around protection. So the most well-known symbol for protection is the color black. A lot of people incorporate black candles, wearing the color black, black crystals, and there's crystals in a variety of colors that you can use for protection. Labradorite is one of my favorite ones. It's such a beautiful crystal. Sodalite, lapis lazuli are other ones that you can incorporate into your spiritual practice for generating protection. Another way is to incorporate runes. I'll throw some up on the screen so you can have an example of what runes are. But they're essentially just pictures or inscriptions that have meaning assigned to them. So of course there's the traditional runes that a lot of people use in their practice, but you can also come up with your own. So if you find yourself to be particularly creative, you can create your own protection rune and then maybe write it on a piece of paper and burn it, or just keep it somewhere like in a little spell satchel or a spell jar. So these are some ways you can incorporate symbology into your spiritual practice. Of course, these things are not doing the protecting for you. It is all you. You are assigning meaning to these things, and they are generating essences which manifest materially for you. So another way to generate protection in your life is to utilize prayer or affirmation. We've talked about affirmations before and the power that they have. You can utilize protection subliminals or affirm protection affirmations to yourself. You can say a little prayer for protection and really affirm that you have protection in your life. Some examples are, I am protected, I am always safe everywhere I go, I let go of all things that do not serve my highest good, anything sent toward me is sent back ×3. So psychic protection is about reclaiming your mind, your energy, and your soul's path. It's about preserving those things and not allowing other forces to access them for their own selfish benefit. It's about becoming a force to be reckoned with. Okay, it's about inviting in courage, it's about trusting thyself, and it's about standing true in your integrity. So set intentions daily, clear your field often, ground through nature, ground into yourself, invite in awareness, situational awareness, intuitive awareness, stand up for yourself and your neighbors, and show up with integrity. That is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to me talk about protection and psychic attack. I hope that this video was informative and insightful for you. I hope that you took something away from this, and feel free to send it to anybody who you feel may need this information. If you find yourself needing assistance in generating spiritual protection or any other aspect of spiritual development, check out my website down below for one-on-one guidance. But other than that, I'll see you later. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.